Eccentric quasi-isometrics, what the are they? Before we go into that, let me define an eccentric and an isometric contraction so you can understand this type of training and how it can benefit you as a combat athlete. This is mainly for MMA grappling athletes. It has some relevance to strikers, especially during the beginning of fight camp or as a rehab modality, but for performance, MMA and grapplers will benefit most from this. But to break it down, an eccentric contraction is the lengthening contraction. So think about the descent in a squat, the descent in a bench press, the pecs or the quads are lengthening during those activities. The isometric contraction is a contraction or generating force without movement. Think of trying to push this wall or holding a squat position, etc. An eccentric quasi-isometric is holding an isometric contraction until failure and then maximally resisting the eccentric phase. A good example of this, I'll throw this on the screen, which will be used later as well, is an eccentric quasi-isometric pull-up, holding that position and trying to maintain it as long as possible as you start to descend. So why do eccentric quasi-isometrics within your training? Doing these exercises can increase mechanical tension and metabolic stress and allow you to perform more work for an exercise. We know that mechanical tension and metabolic stress are key driving factors for muscle size and strength. We also see increased work capacity doing this. Further, you can give your tendons some love. It's nice on the tendons because it is an isometric contraction. It can provide some kind of analgesic or numbing effect, making it good for rehab. But you're able to get a lot of maximally intense work done in a short period of time. Another important factor is because you're getting maximal tension at longer muscle lengths, you don't start at long muscle lengths, you start at middle or short muscle length isometrics, and as you start to go through the eccentric into the long muscle lengths, you reach maximal tension in those longer lengths, leading to greater adaptations in muscle size and strength that transfers to all joint angles. Typically, when we're doing isometric training, you only see transfer in gains or strength to joint angles that are specific to what you're training. So for example, if you're holding a squat at a 90-degree knee angle as an example, you typically only find strength gains at that knee angle, slightly above and slightly below. But when you're doing isometrics at long muscle lengths, so take for example, the end range of a Romanian deadlift, when you're bent over, your knees are almost straight and you're getting that big stretch on the hamstrings. That strength tends to transfer across the entire joint angle for that muscle group. This is one of the advantages of doing eccentric quasi-isometrics. Another link to this increased work capacity and increased muscle size is it acts as a natural blood flow restriction training modality. Typically when we're looking to do blood flow restriction training, we're trying to reduce the blood flow leaving the muscles. So we'll tie rubber bands at the top of the arm or top of the legs while doing or leg exercises. If you go listen to the podcast with Chris Glavio, that is on the Sweet Times Fighting podcast channel, he is the guru on blood flow restriction training. We run through all the different protocols you can do there. But this is one way to do it without having to use bands or cuffs to reduce that blood flow. The idea is you're creating a hypoxic or less oxygen environment for the muscle. You get more of a buildup of metabolites, increasing metabolic stress. You're able to train your muscles to further resist fatigue, increase work capacity, and these metabolites tend to signal better anabolic signaling to increase muscle size. And I believe where it is most beneficial for combat athletes, especially grapplers, is improving the ability to resist fatigue or developing those peripheral or muscular adaptations that can transfer to your grappling within MMA, jiu-jitsu, judo, etc. So you need to pick exercises when you're doing these that allow you to hold positions. Typically when we're doing pushing isometrics, which are different to the holding isometrics, pushing isometrics increase agonist or the prime moving muscle activation. You're typically producing more force and you can push for longer. Holding isometrics, which are part of our eccentric quasi-isometrics, tend to activate or allow more co-activation around the joint, meaning we're able to activate simultaneously the antagonist or the opposite muscle to the one being worked and the synergist muscles. Because of this increased joint stabilization, the holding isometrics or the eccentric quasi-isometric contractions tend to carry over better where you have to maintain specific joint positions or postures, which is one of the prevalent things within grappling and MMA. Obviously, wrestlers have to maintain postures and positions. Jiu-jitsu athletes must maintain certain postures. All of those carry over into wrestling. Obviously, we could see a little bit of that in striking arts, for example, the clinch in Muay Thai. But again, I believe this applies mostly within grappling. MMA still has some application within striking. So here are a few examples of how you could do this. The eccentric quasi-isometric pull-up, which I showed in the beginning, I'll show again now, is one of them. Great for the upper body. You can do overhand or underhand. You can play around with both. You can add load if you want to reduce the time. We'll go over some of the sets and reps and timings on top of that. That is probably the best example of an upper body eccentric quasi-isometric. You could do the same with a push-up. You could hold a half push-up position and you could hold that until you essentially fail down to the bottom. The snatch deadlift is a brutal one. I believe this one is best for wrestlers. Wrestlers having to find or being in a wrestling stance often and reduce posture breaks. Using the snatch deadlift is awesome. And typically, if you somewhat know what you can snatch, it's probably not something that's very common, but a good prescription is 140% of your snatch max. So I think it's best to take maybe around 80-90% of your snatch deadlift in this position. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna stand on a platform, you're gonna be on a deficit, snatch deadlift, and then you're gonna get into the hang position, so down to the knees, and you're gonna hold that position for as long as you can. It is hard, I've done it. Hopefully I found the video to put in this video as well. Otherwise I'm gonna have to probably do it and try and get it in here. But that thing is brutal. It will develop your glutes, lower back, upper back, all of it to a significant degree and transfer well into your wrestling and grappling performance. Other things you can do with machines, single leg leg press is another one. So having your one leg partly bent around 90 degrees or maybe a quarter to halfway down, holding that position and just resisting and just basically try hold that position as long as possible and let the platform push your foot down as you fatigue. And these are different exercises that you could use within a training program. So regarding how long you should hold these for, the general recommendation is anywhere between 5 and 90 seconds. Now I know that's a pretty wide range to give, but typically if you're looking more at strength power adaptations, you're looking down this 5 to maybe 20-second area. And then if you're looking for more endurance adaptations, yeah, you're looking all the way up to 90 seconds. I would typically recommend anywhere from around 30 to 45, maybe 60 seconds for most combat athletes. Obviously you can kind of go either end of that a bit, but that tends to work well when you're looking at eccentric quasi-isometrics. If you see in the pull-up video that was up, I think that was around 20 or 25 seconds. That was with body weight. So if you were able to do that as an example for say 40, 45 seconds, maybe another day in the week you may add some load and try get down to 30 seconds by using the load to make it more intense. In terms of sets and reps, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can do your normal sets. So let's say, for example, you have weighted pull-ups or pull-ups in your program. You have 3 sets of 5 to 6 weighted. You do your 3 sets of 5 to 6, then afterwards, you would do your 1 set of eccentric quasi-isometrics. You can do the same thing if you're doing deadlifts. You can then add the snatch deadlift, quasi-isometric, etc. Another way you could do it is you could use it as a standalone exercise, do 2 or 3 sets like that. I tend to like the first variation instead of just relying solely on this. However, there are certain times you may use these within your training program. We'll go into when they fit in your program. And these tend to work best near the beginning of a training cycle. So for example, if you're going through a preparatory period, maybe you're out of camp, you don't have a fight coming up, or you've just had a fight and you're getting back into off-season quote-unquote training, that is probably when these will be best to use. They have a numbing effect, as I mentioned, on the tendons, good for joint and just general muscle health. You're getting strong muscle size, work capacity adaptations from an intense training modality that doesn't beat the body up. So it works well in those instances. Obviously, it can be used if you have a fight coming up, maybe for that first few weeks of that fight camp if you're needing to do something like this, but that's where it tends to work best. Anecdotally, weightlifters tend to use some of these techniques to maintain positions that they need to hit when they're lifting heavy loads off the floor and into the overhead positions. So the same idea can be used to help you maintain different postures when you're on the mats, in the cage, or in the ring. Make sure you head down to the description, check the link for the Sweet Science of Fighting Underground. Has all the training programs in there for grapplers, strikers, and MMA athletes. And comment below. Have you done these before? Is this something new for you? I'd like to know, and so I can make more videos like this for you.